If you haven't seen the previous episodes, please check out the other videos on the channel first. It had already been over 2 weeks since Taeyong started working. The past few days had been so hectic that he barely had a moment to breathe, but fortunately, the job seemed to suit him, so he found it more enjoyable than tiring. After work, he always made time to study more about the brand he was working for. He would shake his head, acknowledging that the service industry wasn't easy, but he was sincerely grateful to Hoseok for introducing him to this job. With the help of Seokyeon, his co-worker, Taeyong had gradually gotten used to the work. Now that Seokyeon told him he could probably manage the store by himself, Taeyong felt excited. Although he had made quite a few mistakes, the thought that he was finally being recognized made him hum a little tune as he waited for the elevator. He absent-mindedly touched the unfamiliar name tag he wore. Like an ID badge, it was something he couldn't go without in this job, just like any regular office worker. Lifting his head, Taeyong watched as the elevator slowly descended and stepped inside once the doors opened. Once inside, he pressed the button for the 13th floor, and from the distance, he noticed a group of older men walking down the hallway. Among them was a man who seemed familiar. Seeing them approach the elevator, Taeyong pressed the open button and waited, smiling. By the time the group reached the elevator, a short man in the group gave Taeyong a once-over with wide eyes. "Who are you?" Startled by the sudden question, Taeyong blinked in confusion. The young man, who had been looking at him indifferently, glanced at his expensive-looking wristwatch. "This is the VIP elevator, isn't it? Where do you work? Do you have any sense?" Taeyong's eyes widened in shock. He nervously looked around the elevator, noticing for the first time the golden letters that read VIP only above the floor indicator. Oh no! It really is. His face turned pale as he processed what had happened, so that's why there was no line. Unbelievable. How could someone so clueless work at our department store? The short man who had yelled at Taeyong approached him, as if to grab the name tag hanging around his neck. Taeyong instinctively stepped back, his face drained of color. But then, Director Choi, the young man, who had been watching the scene unfold, spoke up, and the short man froze. Everyone behind him turned their attention to the young man. "You know we don't have time to waste." But, let's just go up." "I apologize, Vice President." That was out of line. Before the short man could even finish his sentence, the young man walked into the elevator, followed by the rest of the group. Taeyong stood frozen in place, unable to say anything. As the elevator doors closed, the young man's eyes lingering on his name tag before disappearing from view. As relief washed over him, Taeyong let out the breath he had been holding and clutched his trembling hands to his chest. The number 20, indicating the floor they had stopped on, felt eerily unsettling. Manager, What is it, Taeyong?" Seokyeon, who had been busy checking inventory, paused at Taeyong's question. Taeyong, nervously biting his lip, asked, "What's on the 20th floor?" "I thought you said the department store only goes up to the 19th floor." "Oh," Seokyeon said absent-mindedly as he resumed his work. "The 20th floor is where the shareholders hold their meetings." "I'm not too sure, but apparently, the JK Group is in turmoil because of some succession issues." So that young man must have been the successor. Taeyong couldn't figure out if he should be thankful or apologetic, and he shook his head, trying to dismiss the thoughts. "Oh, right. Taeyong. I need to step out for a bit. I have a meeting with the director about the new season's collection." "Oh, sure. Take your time, I've finished checking the stock, so there's not much to do. But if anything happens, call me immediately, okay?" Seokyeon's voice carried a hint of worry as he reminded Taeyong to reach out if needed. Taeyong nodded enthusiastically, his voice loud and confident. Seokyeon, now in his coat and ready to leave, pointed at his phone one last time. "Don't forget to call, okay?" "Absolutely." Watching Seokyeon leave, Taeyong busied himself cleaning up what remained of Seokyeon's tasks. As he was tidying up, he heard the distinct sound of heels clicking against the floor. Thinking it was a customer, he straightened up and greeted them. "Welcome, sir." He bent at a 90-degree angle as he had been taught. After about 3 seconds, he straightened his back, only to be met with a familiar face. Unless his eyes were deceiving him, this was the man he had seen earlier, the successor, the vice president. He hadn't gotten a good look earlier, but now that they were up close, he noticed the fashionable brown suit the man wore. Despite his youthful appearance, the cold expression he wore made Taeyong's spine tingle. The man glanced around the store before settling into a plush sofa. Seeing that he was alone, Taeyong snapped out of his daze and followed the customer service manual. "Is there a particular product you're looking for?" Taeyong smiled as warmly as he could, but the man didn't respond. Instead, he stared at Taeyong's face for a long moment before finally speaking. "Seems like you didn't receive proper training. Excuse me, when I walk in, you're supposed to show me the new season's products first. Don't you know that?" It felt like someone had hit him over the head with a blunt object. So this man was the vice president. Or rather, the heir. Or wait, the chairman's grandson. Taeyong internally screamed as he quickly bowed his head. His reddening cheeks betrayed his embarrassment. I am sorry. I'll prepare them right away." He hurriedly laid out the watches and belts from the new winter collection on a soft cushion. Even as he prepared the items, Taeyong felt torn between calling his manager and showing the products to this man. But his body moved before his mind made a decision, heading straight toward the customer. "This is the F/W collection. The items were just delivered today." He carefully placed the products on the glass table. The man picked them up one by one, inspecting them, before asking with a dissatisfied look, "This is supposed to be the 2016 F/W collection, could it be?" "No way." The manager said this was the new stock. "Yes, humph." The man sighed and crossed his long legs, then looked up at Taeyong with a sharp, cold gaze. Do you even know what F/W means?" "Excuse me, fall and winter." "What you're telling me is that this is the autumn-winter collection. But what you've brought out is the S/S collection from earlier this year." Gasping, Taeyong took a deep breath and clasped his hands together in front of him. "You're working at a globally renowned menswear brand, and you don't even know basic things like that? Don't you think that's a serious problem?" "I'm sore." Instead of apologizing, "Maybe you should do something about that awful suit you're wearing." The man stood up and walked closer to Taeyong, tugging at his bright red tie. Their faces were suddenly so close that Taeyong's eyes widened in shock. "Do you even know which brand made this suit you're wearing? What year it's from, or which collection it's part of?" His words were completely condescending. Taeyong clenched his fists, his hands trembling. His eyes started to glisten with unshed tears as the man, still gripping the tie, stared down at him. For a moment, the man's face contorted as if he, too, was uncomfortable with the situation. Letting go of the tie, the man eventually turned on his heel and left the store.